Ladies and gentlemen, my name is S. Michael, and I'm coming to you today as your Christian heretic. What that means specifically, heretic, just simply means not orthodox. Now, I, for one, am not a mainstream Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. I love Jesus, and I have what I feel is a very important but also personal relationship with Jesus. However, I didn't come to this road easy. I came to this road by a series of questions and also a lot of research. So what I'm going to share with you today is something that I am calling I Have Questions. And these questions are about original sin. Now, for as long as I have been born, for as long as I can remember, original sin was always about Eve. She was the one who started it all. She was the one who had the problems, and she was the main reason for man's downfall. However, there always seemed to be one question that I simply had, and it was this: how did the serpent convince Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Now, when we go to the Bible, we look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 17, where God is telling them, hey, this is where you can eat, but he says, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. That seems pretty clear, especially with respect to how I learned it. I learned it as God was telling both Adam and Eve that very same thing at the same time. However, when we get to Genesis chapter 3, Eve is talking to the serpent. And she tells the serpent in mid-sentence, hey, but for the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it. Clearly, she got the message. She knew, she understood. However, you see that ellipsis in the screen there? That is a grammatical tool that writers use in order to obfuscate the message or leave out a part of the quote that is relevant or irrelevant to their discussion. But if we keep reading, that quote says, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Now, I've never seen this in any movie, never heard about it in any Bible story, and as far as I can remember, Eve saying, neither shall ye touch it lest ye die, is the first I've actually heard of it. And if I hadn't read it for myself in the King James 1611, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But the immediate question is, who told her that? How did she come up with that? Now, she hadn't eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil yet, so she's not making this up. And if she's not making this up, she's not lying either. So that just kind of begs the question, and we keep going. And the serpent said unto her, unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes will be open, and ye shall have knowledge of, or ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Now, I've never heard of anybody being told, if you eat this, it will kill you. Go ahead, so eat it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But the serpent talked his way into convincing her to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, even after God said this very clearly, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day thou shalt eat of it, thou shalt surely die. Now, he says this in chapter 2, verse 17. And as I remember, as I've been taught, both Adam and Eve were there. There's zero confusion. But when I kept reading, I found something very interesting, yet disturbing. He gave that command in verse 17. But as we see here in verse 21, and the Lord caused deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took a rib, or took one of Adam's ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. Now we all know where this is going because we've heard this story so many times. And the rib which the Lord had taken from man, he made woman and brought her unto the man. So how could she have gotten the commandment in chapter 2, verse 17, if she wasn't created until chapter 2, verse 21, 22? I'm not trying to say that the Bible is in any way trying to mislead us. But what I am saying is, if she wasn't there, how could this have been her sin? So when we go to chapter 3, God is giving out all of the judgments. And these are the only real clues that lead to how she might have been deceived. Because in the Bible, all the serpent did was talk. However, right here in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, the Lord curses him and says, upon thy belly thou shalt go, and thus shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I think a very notable thing is to say, God didn't punish the serpent's ability to speak. According to the Bible, the serpent talked Eve into eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but God's judgment was to take his limbs and force him to go upon his belly. This is an interesting and excellent opportunity for us to dig deeper. It's almost as if the scriptures are imploring us to keep looking. And that's how I want to conclude at least this portion, part one of it, is with Proverbs 25. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings it is to search out the matter. That was just a little bit of this series that I call I Have Questions. But for now, let's take a look at some answers. Similarly, I have questions about the serpent. Now, how does the punishment fit the crime? I.e., the Lord took his limbs, but not his ability to speak. And it was his ability to speak that convinced Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If we keep looking in Genesis 3, but for the tree that is in the midst of the garden, ye shall not eat of it, for thou shalt surely die, and neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. That's not an exact quote from my mouth, but we have the text there. Now the serpent, according to the Haggadah in the creation of the world, the fall of man, she spoke thus because in his zeal to guard her against transgressing of the divine command, Adam had forbidden Eve to touch the tree, though God had only mentioned the eating of it. Now, some of us, myself included, have always said, well, that's not in the Bible. But at the same time, if Eve wasn't created until after the commandment, it's a natural thing to say to protect someone. Don't even touch it. It'll kill you. I can understand that. But when we keep reading, we look at Genesis 2, and this is something very interesting. Right after he gives the commandment, the Lord said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. So at this point, it's painfully clear Adam was alone when God gave that commandment, told Eve not to eat of the tree of the fruit, not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but also not to touch it. Now, if we continue, the serpent said unto her, reminding again, hey, you surely won't die for touching it. God knows, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So let's get to the part that might actually be confusing. Because the Lord said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above all beasts of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Again, talking, but getting your limbs removed or restricted or punished. But if we go to the Haggadah one more time in the fall of man, the serpent stood like a man upon 2 feet and in height equal to a camel. As far as I'm concerned, that's NBA regulation height. But how did he convince Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Again, comes down to this. We've already established that Adam was alone. We've already established that he could only have been the one to tell her, if she touches it, she dies. So of course, this has to happen. The serpent must have pushed her. And according to the Haggadah, I didn't make this up, I looked this up. The Haggadah, the serpent pushed Eve against the tree and said, you see that touching the tree has not caused your death. As little will it hurt you to eat the fruit of the tree. Now, I'm one of those kinds of guys where once the information changes, I'll change my mind. Here's some information that changes the whole thing. Eve gets there. She's told by her husband, don't touch this tree, it'll kill you. Don't eat the fruit, don't even touch the tree. The serpent makes her touch the tree. She's not hurt. She doesn't die, and she's not even hurt. Now, the thinking person might assume, maybe I was lied to. And if she was lied to, is that not a sin before the original sin? Now, before we start going on and blaming man for this, let's remember there's more to this story, and it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings it is to search out the matter. I'm your Christian heretic, S. Michael. This is a series called I Have Questions. If you like this video, please +1 and leave some comments, but also subscribe and share this information, because the more we talk about these things, the harder it is to keep them a secret. I'll be right back here again next week, next Sunday, where we start talking about Adam. He's the one who got the direct order. He's the one who got the direct command. He's the one who ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil with all the information. So our WTF moment for the month, Adam. WTF, man, what happened? Thank you, and have a great day.